Mistborn Era 2 Alloy of Law. Prologue. Waxilium Ladrian, a lawman and descendant of Breeze, finds himself out in the Roughs in pursuit of his latest bounty on Bloody Tan. The Roughs is the neglected area outside of Elendel, the new city of industry replacing Luthadel after the rebirth of the world. Waxilium is accompanied by Lessie, his partner and wife. To her dismay, she notices the letter tucked in Wax's shirt pocket, the one inviting him back to Elendel. Together, they track Bloody Tan to Feltrell, a mostly abandoned town. By use of Waxilium's twin-born abilities, allowing him one allomantic and one ferrochemical ability, being that of a coin shot and a skimmer. He is able to fend off assailants and track Bloody Tan into his twisted gallery of mummified victims. He finds Bloody Tan using Lessie as a hostage. Following their own personal protocol, Lessie blinks a third time, indicating for Waxilium to shoot Bloody Tan. Wax does shoot, but to his utter horror, Lessie is strangely yanked into the path of the bullet meant for Bloody Tan, taking her just above the eye, killing her instantly. Wax shoots a second bullet into Bloody Tan's head, dropping him next to his dead wife. Chapter 1. 5 months have passed since the death of his wife, and Wax has followed the letter's wishes in returning to Elendel in the wake of his sister Telsin and Uncle Edward's death to do his duty to his house, in becoming acquainted with his title as the Lord Waxilium Ladrian. Wax finds himself on a balcony away from the party he was supposed to be attending, the call of the mists urging him away. The lady Avingset, a potential suitor, appears on the balcony requesting he rejoin the party with her. Wax, disregarding his duty in the frivolous chatter and politicking that comes with it, slips from the balcony using a bullet casing to slow his fall. He then disappears into the night, enjoying his small reprieve. Eventually, he stumbles upon a crime. Intending to deal with the criminals, he drops near them, but hears a woman whimpering, and is unable to fire his Styrian revolver. The hesitation nearly costs him a bullet to the ribs had his steel bubble not redirected the gunfire. A steel bubble is a passive ability Wax constantly uses, in which he lightly pushes in every direction to misdirect bullets. Wax leaves, allowing the constables to do their job, realizing that the whimpering wasn't coming from a woman, just a thug that had taken a bullet before he had arrived. Dismayed at his continued PTSD, Wax returns to his estate with the death of Lessie haunting him. Tilame, his butler, subtly chastises Waxilium and reminds him of his duty to his house. Seeing the truth in his words, Wax relinquishes his guns over to the butler, asking him to safely store them away, saying that he won't be in need of them again, doubling his devotion to becoming the Lord Waxilium Ladrian that his house needs. Chapter 2. 6 months later, Wax at his home estate is expecting the arrival of Lord Harms and his daughter Steris, a potential match in a marriage of convenience. One that would save the Ladrian house from its debt while also pairing House Harms, which has no male heir, to a powerful ally. Wax, expecting the Lord Harms, is surprised to find Wayne, his ex-partner, a lanky man and master of disguises, waiting in his study to ambush him. Wayne, like Wax, is twin-born, a slider and bloodmaker. The two begin arguing as to why Wayne is now in his study, opposed to Weathering, where Wax had left him in charge to look over things in his absence. They hear the door chimes, this time announcing the arrival of Lord Harms. Before Wax even has a chance to get rid of Wayne, Lord Harms barges in, and Wayne, having done an instant costume change, announces himself as Wax's uncle on his mother's side, with a perfect dialect to match his new disguise. Lord Harms, believing Wayne's disguise wholeheartedly, is offended Wax hadn't informed his uncle of the intent of this meeting. He then introduces his daughter Steris, a buxom blonde-haired woman with a stern gaze, and her younger cousin Mercy, a timid dark-haired girl with vibrant red lips. Steris steers the conversation towards its intent, the marriage agreement, and proceeds to hand over a hefty document outlining the extent of said marriage, even detailing the amount of allowed sexual encounters per week in the handling of mistresses. Wax, perplexed by the rigidness of this proposal, agrees to proceed regardless, and they plan for their first public outing to be an upcoming wedding they had both been invited to. During the exchange, at the enthusiasm of Mercy, the conversation shifts toward the recent criminal heist taking place, where train cars and wealthy people were being robbed, always ending in the kidnapping of women. Wayne, during this conversation, uses his slider ability to throw up a speed bubble, a sort of force field. When inside, time moves normally, but everything outside is slowed down tremendously, creating a safe haven for them to talk with no one noticing. Within the speed bubble, Wayne gives Wax an aluminum bullet he had taken from one of the recent crimes that he had been investigating. Aluminum is very rare, making it valuable and dangerous to allomancers, for they cannot push or pull against it. After the meeting, Wayne appeals to Wax's instincts in wanting to help people in an attempt to steer him back to being his old self and partner. Chapter 3. 8 hours later, Wax in his study is deep into investigating the Vanishers, the name coined in the broadsheets for the people responsible for the heists. He theorizes that the Vanishers' real target is the kidnapped women, all coming from noble houses, suspecting that these women are actually allomancers, noting how the Vanishers are also getting away with a lot of allomantic metals. Wax is interrupted by the butler bringing tea. Tilame urges Wax to focus on his duties to his house rather than the robberies. Wax submits, but before attending to his house ledgers, he realizes he hasn't prayed to Harmony that day, as is the Pathian way. So, Wax puts in the required earring and seeks out Harmony for answers. Harmony is the multi-shard, godlike being Sazed became after taking up the shards of both ruin and preservation. Whilst praying, Wax often feels a presence, but dismisses it. During his meditation, Wax feels that Harmony wishes for him to investigate the crimes and also be a good house lord for the many people relying on him. His thoughts begin drifting toward Lessie and the horrific imagery surrounding it. This wakes Wax from his meditation, and so he begins tackling the ledgers deep into the night. Chapter 4. Wax escorts Steris to the Yeoman-Oslin wedding dinner, hands held in precisely the right manner for the guests to gauge their relationship as insisted upon by Steris. They arrive at their table, which is occupied by Lord Harms and Mercy. Wayne, disguised as their waiter, slips Wax a secret message indicating he was right about the Vanishers wanting allomancers. Wax asks after Mercy's education at university and discovers that she is studying law and has a bit of an obsession with the roughs and Wax's adventures in them, staying up to date on his many feats. Wax's obscene conversational jokes are met with disapproval from Steris, and once Wax, Mercy, and Wayne are alone, Wayne sits down, relinquishing his disguise, knowing that Mercy saw through it. They begin discussing the Vanishers with Mercy, who assumes Wax returned to Elendel to apprehend them. Wax discourages this line of thinking, and Wayne points out that this very wedding would be an excellent target for the Vanishers. And at that very moment, the doors on either side of the ballroom are flung open. Chapter 5. The 2 to 3 dozen Vanishers move throughout the room, demanding people relinquish their jewelry. Wax realizes the bandits genuinely are interested in robbing the people, but his suspicions that the hostages aren't chosen at random is confirmed when he sees their leader, whose voice sounds familiar, comparing drawings on his hand to the people at each table in order to find the correct hostages. Wayne tries to convince Wax to fight, but Wax resists, not wanting to cause harm to any of the innocent bystanders. Mercy discreetly tries writing down descriptions of the bandits in order to help in their eventual eventual capture. Steris is picked as the first hostage, with Mercy being the second. Lord Peterus bravely stands up to the bandits, asking them to take him instead, calling them cowards, and is shot because of it. It isn't until the leader tells his men that they can have some fun that Wax finally gives in to Wayne's request, withdrawing multiple hidden weapons as Wayne throws up a speed bubble to analyze the situation. Chapter 6. Wayne drops the speed bubble and the two proceed to dispatch bandits in stylish Alamantic fashion. Wax once again feels a sense of recognition from the Vanisher leader and believes it to be Miles Debator, a lawman from the Roughs that Wax had worked with. Wax faces off against Tarson, a Koloss-blooded pewter arm who uses Mercy as a hostage, bringing Wax flashbacks of Lessie, causing him to hesitate. Luckily, Mercy is able to create an opening for Wax and escape, and with her help they are able to kill a majority of the bandits. Wayne gets himself cornered and wounded, forcing Wax to go to his aid rather than stopping the leader from escaping with the kidnapped Steris. The constabulary shows up and Breton chastises Wax for causing havoc. Reddy gives a casualty report of 25 dead bandits, 6 captured alive, and only 1 dead civilian, being the Lord Peterus. Breton, astonished, still warns Wax that he is in charge here and doesn't appreciate such reckless behavior regardless of the outcome. Wayne steals one of the aluminum guns and gives it to Wax. Lord Harms approaches Wax, pleading with him to save Steris, to which Wax promises that he will. Mercy comments on how Lord Harms wishes it were she who was taken in place of Steris, and Wayne chastises Wax for allowing Tarson to make off with his lucky hat. Chapter 7. One day later, Mercy stands before Waxillium's mansion, nervous and with the fanciful thoughts of his swooping in and rescuing her the day before playing through her mind. Tilame, with reluctance, informs Mercy that Wax is too preoccupied to come down and sit with her, and instead requests that she come up to his study. This forwardness surprises her, feeling it's not very proper. Mercy finds Wax hunched over a chem station in the midst of figuring out the exact alloy used in the aluminum gun. Waxillium, completely oblivious to the breach of etiquette, apologizes for his naivety. Mercy quickly assures him she doesn't mind and tells him that the Lord Harms intends to bankroll Wax in his endeavor to rescue Steris. The two of them begin working through the Vanisher's motives. Mercy quickly comes to the same conclusion of Wax, that the Vanishers are being funded by a different group which wants the women. Mercy then sees something the sleep-deprived Wax had missed, that the Vanishers weren't just trying to steal an army of Alamancers. No, they were intending to breed an army of Alamancers. From the women they kidnapped, all of whom have a direct genetic Alamantic line to the Lord Mistborn. The implication this means for Steris makes the two of them feel sick. Mercy then asks after Wayne, to which Wax responds that he had sent him out to cause a little mischief. Chapter 8. Wayne, in disguise as a 7th Octant captain, walks into the 4th Octant constabulary and persuades Captain Breton to allow him to interview 2 of the Vanishers in their custody. Breton reluctantly agrees, and Wayne, in secret, is able to manipulate the Vanishers into giving up who recruited them, as well as their base of operations, right under the constabulary's noses. He is also able to convince the prisoner he manipulated into confessing to everything at a later time, so that the constabulary would only be left in the dark long enough for him, Wax, and Mercy to investigate first. Wayne, grabbing a scone on the way out, leaves to tell Wax the good news. Chapter 9. Waxillium and Mercy are debating when Wayne returns. During their conversation, Wax deduces that Mercy is the bastard child of Lord Harms, making her Steris' half-sister. Something they had been keeping quiet, but it explains Steris' normalcy in talking about mistresses, and why Harms is paying for Mercy's education. Tilame enters bringing tea for Wax, of which Wayne procures himself some in order to take more bend alloy, and casually informs them that the tea has been poisoned before collapsing. With his murder attempt accidentally thwarted, Tilame points an aluminum gun at Wax. Before firing the shot, Wax is able to disrupt the bullet's trajectory with a steel-pushed button from his shirt. Wax, removing his focus from the butler, tends to Wayne, whose Bloodmaker ability should nullify the poison's effect. Mercy interjects, drawing Wax's attention back to Tilame, who managed to activate the explosion he had hidden in the basket he had brought in. Wax cries out to Wayne to throw up a speed bubble and does so just in time. Mercy begins panicking at the slowly expanding explosion around them as Wax and Wayne casually discuss ideas of escape. Eventually, Wax settles on breaking through the floor using his stored ferrochemical weight. Mercy on top of Wax to cushion her fall, and Wayne taking the brunt of the explosion during the fall. Luckily, Wayne is able to heal his wounds, and the three take this opportunity to escape before anyone realizes they survived. Chapter 10. Wax, Wayne, and Mercy take a carriage to the 5th Octant, and Mercy questions Wax on his uncle's death, asking if it truly were an accident. Wax says instinctively he toyed with the idea, but now wonders if the reports had been too clean, suggesting it was a cover-up. They arrive and locate the Vanisher's hideout near a canal dock. Wax and Wayne clear the building of potential traps before allowing Mercy to enter as well. They split up, and Mercy asks Wayne how he ended up with Wax. Wayne tells her his origin story, how he was a young thief and was influenced into a more serious crime of armed robbery, where he shot and killed an innocent man, a father of 3. For better or worse, Wax took pity on him and saved him from being hanged. Wax returns from questioning the surrounding beggars, discovering that shipments went in and out of the hideout. Wayne and Mercy show him the expensive branded cigar box they had found with a series of handwritten numbers on it. Wax immediately recognizes the brand, confirming his suspicions of their leader being Miles Debator. Chapter 11. Miles is called in to talk to Mr. Suit, presumably the one funding this whole Vanisher operation. Mr. Suit discusses Miles' recent disaster at the wedding reception, along with bringing up their next heist, which entails the robbery of the Tekiel's self-pronounced unrobbable freight car. Suit complains that things would have been so much simpler had the explosion only killed Wax, and regrets kidnapping Steris, for Wax won't stop pursuing them now. Mr. Suit tells Miles that Wax will have to be dealt with beforehand, which Miles declares that he will take care of it. For in his mind, Wax chose to serve the wealthy and not the people when he returned to Elendil. So while he has great respect for Waxilium, he will not let that stop him from doing what he must. Having left the Vanisher's hideout and now heading to one of the crime scenes via train, Wax and Wayne fill Mercy in on who Miles is and their past with him, claiming him to be a good lawman with a disturbing moral compass, as well as explaining how Miles is a twin-born of a very dangerous combination of double gold, granting him the ability to compound, which is a complicated process of storing and burning metal in order to amplify one's abilities to an absurd degree, making Miles essentially immortal, with his blood-making ability allowing him near infinite healing. Mercy insists on staying with Wax despite the obvious danger. Wax then reveals to her that he knows she is an Allomancer picking up on cues and asks what she can do. She reveals that she is a pulsar and has the ability to accelerate time outside of a bubble, and opposite to Wayne. She is ashamed of how useless her ability is and how her father, the Lord Harms, insisted she hide it. Although Wax deduces that this was most likely done so that Mercy wouldn't outshine his legitimate daughter Steris. Wax dismisses her shame by assuring her that while it may not serve every situation, her ability definitely has its uses. Chapter 12. Their train arrives at the outer estates, and Mercy, Wax, and Wayne take a carriage to one of the robbery crime scenes. Wayne trades hats with their carriage driver, still distraught over the one he had lost, and Wax begins investigating. Wayne notices how Mercy's diction around Wax is enhanced, always seeking to impress him. He decides to tell her that she should pursue her feelings and that Wax would make a good match for her. Wax makes note of how the train tracks run parallel to the canals and can only assume that some sort of machinery is involved in the heists. Back on the train, Wax is proven wrong on his previous thoughts that Miles would go to ground like a regular criminal, when he hears a distant scream allowing him to dodge an incoming bullet, tearing through his cabin. Wax sees Miles in the next car over, and it occurs to him that Miles, being a former lawman, is accustomed to hunting, making Wax his prey. Chapter 13. Knowing the danger a fight would pose to the other passengers, Wax pushes himself to the roof of the railcar to draw Miles away. Wax quickly realizes his efforts are futile against Miles' near immortality and decides his best option is to force Miles off the train. During their fight, Miles explains to Wax that their efforts in the roughs were pointless, that they weren't actually making a difference. Against his wishes, Wax himself is forced off the train, but is able to push his way back on and catches up to Miles, surprising him by throwing a magazine cartridge at him. Miles catches it, allowing Wax something to push against, and he does with all his force, flinging Miles off the train, buying them time to escape. Wax speaks to the engineers, who inform him that they were under orders not to stop the train. Wayne and Mercy, who had been trapped in their cabin, appear. Mercy, after some hesitation and much blushing, seeing Wax shirtless, ultimately decides to tend his wound. Wayne taunts Wax, and after some discussion, and to the delight of Wayne, they decide to head to Renette's in order to hide from Miles' pursuit. Wax assumes that the Vanishers will likely strike again tonight. Chapter 14. The three arrive outside Renette's house and are greeted by the barrel of her shotgun. Mercy panics, but the other two respond to the treatment as a normal occurrence. They are able to not get shot, and Wayne gains them entry by bribing her with the aluminum gun he had given to Wax. Wayne begins acting strangely around Renette, and Wax informs Mercy that Wayne has an unhealthy infatuation with the woman that isn't reciprocated. He tells Mercy that he doesn't think Renette likes any man that way. It is revealed that Renette has been working on haze killer rounds, a type of ammunition specifically designed to kill different types of Allomancers. Renette allows Wax to use her latest prototype gun, Vindication, named after the Ascendant Warrior, that is able to shoot the haze killer bullets as long as he promises to bring back a field report. Wax comes up with a plan, asking Wayne if he still has that dynamite, and sends him to borrow a shipping manifest. He then sends Mercy to buy some strong fishing nets and asks Renette for a room and some paper to sketch out his plan. Chapter 15. Miles disputes his failure at killing Wax with Mr. Suit, who informs Miles that the Set, the organization funding this whole operation, does not like him, and they worry that he may turn against them. Miles thinks on how he hasn't actually decided on whether he would turn on them or not. But for now, their interests align in wanting Ellendale to burn, with new leadership rising from its ashes. Miles persuades Mr. Suit to allow him to do this job tonight, claiming it's important so that he can outfit his men with aluminum weapons, but secretly wanting to use the aluminum to also fund his own operation. Mr. Suit agrees, but tells him that after tonight he is to go to ground until the Set can come up with another list of names for him to kidnap, also insisting that he kill Wax tonight, leaving two of his men to help Miles, both Allomancers named Push and Pull according to their power. Miles knows that they're really just there to keep an eye on him. Suit then leaves to board a train out of the city, not knowing that Miles has been keeping track of his comings and goings. Wax has discovered where Miles will strike next, knowing that he needs a new shipment of aluminum since most of it was lost at the Yeoman party, and estimates that it will be from the Techiel shipment at Carlo's Bend. Mercy enters with the netting, and they discuss her role in Wax's plan, and he indicates that he has a good idea of how the Vanishers are performing their vanishing act. Mercy flirts with Wax and tries to bait him into admitting feelings toward her. He avoids the bait at Mercy's dismay, knowing he would be bad for her. Wax, following his religion's belief in wearing his earring when doing something of great import, slips his earring on, preparing himself for whatever the night brings. Chapter 16. Wayne impersonates an older woman at the railway station and uses the disguise to gain information about the breaknot from a guard. The breaknot is the highly sophisticated train car House Tekiel built to thwart robbery. He learns that once locked, the breaknot is nearly impregnable, making it the ultimate defense against the Vanishers. Towards the end of the conversation, he is found out and he runs away using a speed bubble to switch costumes. He then impersonates a member of the Tekiel family and informs the guard that he is sending help from his own personal guard. And then Wayne quickly changes into said help and uses this disguise to get an also disguised Wax close to the breaknot. And when the expected gunfire from Mercy and her hired help begin, Wax fakes a gunshot wound, and Wayne uses the opportunity to drag him into the breaknot and shut the door, locking Wax inside. Wayne uses the excuse that he had no choice, he had to stop the Vanishers from getting into the breaknot, and that it must have worked because the gunfire had ceased. They believe the ruse, with everything going according to plan. Chapter 17. Following the breaknot and watching from afar, Mercy and Wayne can see how the Vanishers have been performing their heists. The Phantom train that the previous robberies have reported is nothing more than a hand-propelled railcar with a strong battery-powered light, used to create a facade while the actual heist takes place in the water as a boat containing a large crane docks and is used to swap out the breaknot with a perfect replica, taking the actual breaknot back with it. While the swap is taking place, the Vanishers use a rotary gun to further keep the attention off the heist. Wayne and Mercy, realizing the danger Wax is in, follow after the real breaknot. Wax, inside the breaknot, has removed his disguise and begun prepping Vindication for use. Miles knows Wax and assumes with absolute certainty that Wax has already figured out how they have been performing the heists. This leads him to the conclusion of Wax being inside the breaknot. He's tempted to just dump the whole thing in the water, guaranteeing Wax's death, if not for the loss of cargo and Suit's anger. Ultimately, he decides against it, and after arriving in the train tunnel, he orders them to break into the breaknot, yanking the doors off as his men all point guns at its entrance. Miles can see no sign of Wax initially until he notices a barely visible wire running from the door into the breaknot's depths, with dynamite taped onto the upturned door. And just as he notices this, the wire goes taut. Chapter 18. Emerging from the blast, Wax sees 4 men killed, noting how it could have been more had he not hesitated to check for civilians before activating the blast. Cursing the openness of the area and how cornered he was, Wax uses the cover of boxes best he can while dispatching Vanishers. He comes face to face with Tarson. The Koloss-blooded pewter arm disarms Wax of Vindication. Just as with a stroke of luck, the roof explodes and Wayne drops from it, snapping his legs from the fall. He throws up a speed bubble as his legs mend, and he and Wax banter. Wayne tells Wax just how timely his arrival was by pointing to the coin shot Push above them that was about to shoot Wax in the head. Wax thanks him and heads for Vindication, as Wayne takes on Tarson. Push pushes Vindication over Wax, who in turn redirects Vindication through the newly created hole in the roof, and with a push of his own, takes after it, catching it mid-air. Mr. Suit's other minion, Pole, assists his companion in trying to kill Wax. Wax struggles against them and is saved by a well-placed shot from Mercy that takes out Pole. Push forces them back into the warehouse, and Wax, finding an opportunity, springs their trap for Miles, trapping him in the nets. Miles, unperturbed, detonates dynamite in his own hand in order to free himself, relying on his healing to mend him. The explosion narrowly misses Wax, who frantically pushes himself back out of the train car. Miles approaches the injured Wax, taunting him, and Wax does his best to escape. Wayne attempts to come to Wax's aid, but takes a bullet in the arm from Push. The second bullet is deflected by Wayne's speed bubble, and he notices the coin shot is using Mercy's rifle. Knowing what Wax would want him to do, he leaves to search for her. The mists begin to flood in through the hole in the roof as Wax begins conversing with Harmony, thanks to the earring. Wax asks Harmony for help, and when he is answered, he half thinks it's delirium causing the voice. Harmony tells Wax that Wax is the help he had sent, so Wax asks for more, and Harmony says he has to be careful in picking favorites, but hints that he has indeed helped Wax even more. Wax then notices the trunk in front of him, the one he had put his guns in and had Tilame store for him. Mercy, who had hidden herself behind the train car and left the rifle behind when Push had come after her, overhears Miles talking with Push. Miles, aware of Mercy's presence, points a gun toward her and orders her to call for Wax, who just then appears, donning his miscloak, revolvers, and dual-wielding his shotguns, which he uses to blast Miles in the side of the face, smiling all the while. Chapter 19. Shooting Miles was, of course, useless, but it did force back Push and allow Wax an opportunity to allomantically push Miles away, using the bird shot exiting Miles' body as an anchor. Miles demands Wax surrender or his men will kill Steris. In the midst of Miles' demand, Wayne throws up a speed bubble, and it is decided they need to incapacitate the coin shot before rescuing Steris from the men Miles had sent after her. At Mercy's suggestion, Wax exits the speed bubble, taking his final haze killer round and pushes it at the coin shot, who attempts to push back at it, causing it to release its outer layer, with the ceramic tip plowing onward directly into Push's eye. Wax quickly makes his way to Steris, fighting off Vanishers on the way. He finds her behind a locked room with the also kidnapped Noxel, the gunsmith forced to furnish the Vanishers with weapons. Wax allomantically pushes Noxel into the canal to swim to safety and pulls Steris close, using a steel push to send them high above the building. Wax then uses all his stored weight in a single instance to push downward, crushing the building down upon the railway tunnel beneath it. Miles calls out to Wax from the tunnel entrance, and Wax is surprised to notice that rather than terrified, Steris seemed aroused from their flight. He sends her to safety and leaves to confront Miles once again. Wax begins to freeze at the sight of Mercy being held hostage with a gun to her head by Tarson. The sight brings back memories of Lessie. He relaxes and calls for Wayne to throw up a speed bubble. Within the bubble, Wax shoots one bullet and watches closely as it's deflected upon exiting. Taking careful aim and unnatural timing, Wax calls for Wayne to drop the bubble and fires another bullet, enhancing its speed with a push right into the first bullet, redirecting it into Tarson's head, ruining Wayne's lucky hat. Facing Miles once again, Wax disarms him with a well-placed shot and keeps shooting, keeping him at bay. He tells Wayne he better be off and turns back to Miles. The fight quickly turns against him and he is beaten badly by Miles, but endures it in order to buy time. On the brink of being finished off, Mercy, who had been hiding, steps forward, drawing Miles' attention from Wax, and reveals how the near immortal man was about to fall to the likes of her. For the backup plan was in full effect. And Miles, looking around, begins to see his mistake, as the shimmering outline of a bubble could be seen, with everything outside of it moving at a rapid pace. Mercy had been burning cadmium, and Wayne, who had left before the bubble went up, was returning with a large force of the constabulary. Mercy drops the bubble, and the officers outnumbering Miles are able to overwhelm and arrest him. Chapter 20. Wax praises Mercy on her ability to see the plan through despite having to watch him beaten. Mercy hovers around him and the two share another moment. Sensing it once again, Wax comes out and says how this thing she seeks between them can't happen. He feels regretful in doing so, but he knows that he would not be good for her. Not really because of the age difference, more because she still has a youthful spirit, while his is deeply scarred. Breton grants Wax a deputized forbearance, allowing him to be able to work with the constabulary in the future, also backdating it to include the recent events. Wayne is also forgiven for impersonating an officer on multiple occasions. Steris then approaches Wax and shows him a more vulnerable side. First, awkwardly declaring that she remains untouched by her captors, and that she wishes for them not only to go through with the engagement, but to expedite it, seeing as it wouldn't be unnatural in the public eye for things to accelerate between them. After all, he did rescue her. It actually makes the whole thing quite romantic. She explains to him that she isn't good with people, and that her previous suitors not so kindly pointed out her flaws. Wax tells her he intends to continue with his extracurricular activities, to which she responds that a man must have his hobbies. And Wax, surprising himself, agrees to her wishes, and wonders why he was choosing her and turning down Mercy. Epilogue. Mercy, who in the past day and a half had been nearly killed herself, fallen in love and rejected of that love, found herself attending Miles's execution. And when the firing squad ripped into the man until his healing ran out, finally condemning him to the thing he had been cheating for so long, death, she found herself satisfied. Miles' 100 lives' last words were odd and foretelling. He called them all fools, and that the men of gold and red, bearers of the final metal, will come and they will be ruled by them. Worship Trell and wait. On the way out, she notices a cloaked figure and has a sudden desire to find out who he is, and so follows him. She confronts him in an alley, the figure revealed to be a figure of myth. Iron Eyes. Marsh. Iron Eyes apologizes for the strength of his emotional allomancy affecting her, saying how he isn't as refined at it as Breeze. He gives her a book to give to Wax on his behalf, seeing as if he gave it to him directly, he would likely be shot. Iron Eyes tells her that Harmony and him do things differently, and he feels compelled to assist Wax for continuing in what he believes to be his brother's work, Kelsier's work. Mercy agrees to give it to him. Wax tracks down Mr. Suit, knowing him to be his dead uncle based on the descriptions given to the constables. He boards the correct train thanks to Miles' cigar case they had found, with the numbers tracking Suit's movements scrawled on it. Uncle Edward, surprised, greets his nephew, thanking him for helping his plan by stopping Miles, revealing that he intended Miles to be caught in order to take the fall for the robberies and the kidnapped women, who others will testify Miles raped and killed. Edward reveals that the scheme had really been insurance fraud. Tekiel's main house business was security and insurance. His uncle had doomed House Tekiel, who owed way too many high-profile losses and insurance claims. He then bought out House Tekiel's debts for cheap, knowing that the stolen goods would be returned. At Wax's questioning, Edward reveals that Hinston was supposed to take up the Ladrian house title, but was stricken down with disease before he was able to, leaving Edward with little choice but to give it to Wax. Of course, his uncle had hoped Wax had changed and forgone with his foolish childhood self-righteousness, but when that was proven false, Edward, at the demand of his colleagues, had attempted to take Wax's life, via the butler and then Miles. Edward admits that he had hoped Wax had survived, for his bloodline and twin-born abilities are pure, and he hopes in time Wax will see reason, for this world needs him. With everything revealed to him, Wax realizes his uncle was not in as much of a bind as he had hoped, but he goes ahead and asks after the other kidnapped women anyway, to no avail, along with his sister Telson, whom Suit only confirms is alive, leaving Wax to assume her another hostage. And in a sudden fit of anger, Wax swipes the table in front of Suit, threatening him with a gun. Suit, surrounded by guards, has Wax thrown off the back of the train, leaving Wax to return to the train station and meet Wayne there. Wax finds Wayne reading a novel he had pickpocketed off of a man and left an aluminum bullet in its place. Wax thinks on how he will have to talk to Wayne once more about his trading. Wax and the klepto Wayne settle a bet regarding Mr. Suit's identity as his uncle, going in Wax's favor. Wax then shows Wayne the pocketbook he had stolen from his uncle during his outburst of anger when he had swiped the table. Wayne compliments Wax's trickery, asking what he had traded for it. Wax responds, a threat and a promise. Wax would see this to the end, Ruff's honor. When one of your own goes bad, it's up to you to see the mess cleaned up.
You won't get any older, dude. Crack your